So ostensibly and on the surface, what does the Huffington Post have in common with what Jerome is doing and Brandon is doing with Humans of New York? The truth is that what we have in common is really our belief that platforms are making it possible to give voice to people who did not have a voice before. And Brandon put it best when he said, I'm a believer in the ordinary person, just as important and has an equally unique perspective on the world as someone famous and privileged. So that's really what HuffPost did on day one, by creating a blogging platform that put together famous people. I see my friend Mr. Jarvis, with another big believer in this, with people nobody had heard of, with something interesting to say. And so that, together with a journalistic enterprise, was at the heart of the Huffington Post, and I believe is at the heart of what Jerome and Brandon are doing, giving a voice to people and therefore connecting us and identifying our common humanity. And this, in a way, is using the latest platforms, but tapping into something extremely old: humans' need for connection, for purpose, and for hope. So just as we are launching our next big initiative for the next 10 years that we are calling Reimagining Journalism, and a focus on what's working, on solutions, on giving people the full picture of what's happening in the world, not just the darkness, the crisis, the beheadings, which of course we'll continue covering, but also what is working, people coming together, solving problems, ingenuity, compassion, innovation. They are doing that in a completely natural way. And I want to talk to you because I absolutely love you, admire you. I believe you're the future. And I want to have millions more people imitate you, if that's okay, because imitation is the best form of flattery. And we need to replicate and scale the amazing good that you have been doing. So, Jerome, let's start with you. You were broke, and somehow you kept pursuing your dream. What kept you going? And he's 24, incidentally, so he has a way to go.
So about 2 years and a half ago, I was a starving entrepreneur with my. I had a tech startup that I've been struggling with for many years. Like I remember actually trying to come to this conference. I couldn't pay for it because you have to pay for this ticket, right? It's like very expensive, right?
You didn't pay?
No, I couldn't pay for it. So that's when Vine started, and I saw like a great platform, a very interesting format, 6 seconds, and I decided I would put my focus on it. Now, I didn't know yet what I would create, and my first instinct was, there is millions of strangers in the streets. Why don't you do things with them, right? Because, like you said, like everybody has a story. Everybody is a hero on his own journey, and you can record that. You can affect the journey. You can have an interaction with them, and I like to like right now my focus is on. So what I do is comedy, but what I like to do is making people, like what I say, lose their script, meaning when you look in the streets, especially in New York, like every businessman look like a businessman. Every policeman look like a policeman. That's because I think the media had a big impact on this in making us fit in a box, in making us follow a script. The media has been really good at telling us what to do and what to think. And I like to make people lose the script through comedy. So if you start singing an old song in a funny way to a policeman, there's a chance he's gonna giggle like a baby after 6 seconds, and that's really interesting, to make them lose this big
Persona.
thing that they've created around themselves. That is not them. It's not their soul. It's not who they really are. But what you were saying about news, I think news has been really good at informing us. Okay. But it's not been good at making us feel good, making us improve, making us have hope, making us have pursue our dreams, pursue our full potential, and that's what needs to be the future of the news. And I think it's called newer media, but I think it's not about new, it's about real. Like for the first time, it's real. Like when Brendan collects people's stories, there is no filter. It's all real. It taps into their soul. And
that's actually a very good point, because we're not talking about sugarcoating or showing reality through rose-colored glasses. We're talking about giving the full picture. And right now we're not. You know, the New York Times talks about all the news that's fit to print. But the truth is that the media primarily give us all the bad news that's fit to print or to post. And we need to change that and give the full picture, everything that's happening. And Brandon, as you've been going around creating this sensation, you know, Humans of New York, which now has 13 million friends on Facebook and 3 million on Instagram, you started by asking people, what advice would you give? But now you want to focus on their story, not their opinions.
Right. Well, and you guys have to forgive me. Before we came on, Arianna and Jerome were like chatting very easily. I'm like forcing myself to breathe. I get a little bit more nervous on stage. But you know, Humans of New York, and you said something really eloquent before we came out. He said, you know, we were both very broke when we started, and we didn't have access to anything but people's stories because those are free. And I never thought about it like that, and that was a great way of saying that. And you know, Humans of New York actually started as this kind of crazy vision I had to photograph 10,000 people on the streets of New York City. And I moved to New York City to do that. And in the process of doing that, I started kind of having these very short conversations just with strangers on the street. You know, I would stop them and I would kind of give them a very, you know, Oprah-like interview. And, you know, what I've learned is that, you know, through how fast Humans of New York has grown, that given the same attention and focus that we give to celebrities and telling their story, any random person's story on the street can be just as compelling to a large audience as Kanye West or George Clooney. And, you know, it's just that nobody gives it that sort of attention or value. You know, everybody's got this kind of significant narrative arc in their lives, these crazy characters, these like deep tragedies, these giant triumphs. And if you know, get past small talk and like, what's the weather like, and you know, what's your occupation, you know, what's your favorite sports team, and say, you know, what was the saddest moment of your life? What do you feel most guilty about? How could you be a better father? How could you be a better husband? The beauty and poetry in the lives of everyone who walks by you on the street is enough to captivate an audience of tens of millions of people.
And you have now talked to and photographed over 10,000 people.
Right.
So your goal is more than met.
Right. Well, you know, that was the original goal, and now it's, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was unemployed. I never blogged before, and so I had this huge, stupid goal of I'm gonna photograph 10,000 people and then tell the New York Times about it, or tell them. And then I realized that, you know, eventually it's not about doing that. It's about providing consistent content to an audience that they can rely on, and so it kind of it morphed from a project into a blog. Yeah.
And as you are traveling around the world now, you're going to go to Iran, Pakistan, China, Russia later today. You're also helping us discover the common humanity globally.
Right. You know, I went to, the very first place I traveled was Iran, and then last year I went to 12 different countries with the United Nations, including Iraq, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and I remember being, you know, worried, you know, would this style of stopping random people on the street and asking them questions about their lives translate? Would people give me the same access in these different countries? And yeah, and I actually learned that nowhere are people more guarded than New York City. Yeah, I went to Iran. I stopped 120 people on the streets of Iran and maybe got rejected 3 times. You know, I can get rejected 10 times in a row in Midtown at lunchtime. Yeah. So yeah, it's just there definitely is a, you know, kind of universality. Like I said, it's just that if given the same attention and gravity that we give to the lives of celebrities, anyone's lives has enough drama and triumph to be extremely compelling.
You know what's the most exciting I find when you put what's in the news today in any most of TV news, paper news, everything next to what you do is that the news, it's all fear. Like you tune into TV, all I got is fear. It's like, oh my God, this flight disappeared. We have no idea what's going on, but we can talk about it for the next 3 months. There's nothing else going on in the world. This flight disappeared. Fear. There's so much going on in everybody's life at the same time, and you can actually. I haven't watched or consumed news in like 4 years. But I stay informed because if you communicate with people, you're not gonna get completely outdated, you know. But yeah, one is fear and one is hope, and one is entertainment and one is real.
Yeah, I think it's the entertainment, more than fear. Because it's like, it's not anyone's fault that media is filled with, violence. It's not anyone's fault because the pressure goes all the way down from the top. Everyone's fighting for viewers. And if you think about news, everybody's to keep their job has to keep the audience engaged. And what keeps the audience engaged in news is the exact same thing that keeps an audience engaged in a movie: violence, sex, drama. And, I realized that because when I first started out, I would go to like these large protests with 10,000 people, okay? And I would have my camera there, and then I would notice about 10 other members of the press there. And there's this huge gathering of 10,000 people. And there's this one crazy guy saying, "Death to Israel, death to Israel, death to Israel." All 10 cameramen are gathered right around him. And that's the image that's going into every home that night. The most compelling, because it's filled with the most emotion and rage. And they're just trying to tell a compelling story. And so it naturally drifts to fear and violence. And you can extrapolate that and say, it's not just at a protest. The stories coming out of the country of Iraq, the stories that are coming out of the country of Iran. You've got journalists landing on the ground. They've got a responsibility to tell an exciting story. They're looking for men with machine guns. They're looking for drama. They're looking for, if it's a hurricane, the one house that got the most destroyed. And that's what they're showing. So it's not that I say, I'm showing, that's real. It's not like reality. It's just, I try to show a normal distribution of reality by just stopping people randomly. And it's not that they're real and the violence is fake. It's just a more normal distribution of stories.
I think this is an unbelievably important point. I think it should be taught in journalism schools. We produce journalists who really are trained to be doing, if it bleeds, it leads. And as a result, we have an enormous amount of copycat crimes. And here we have a demonstration of how we can change all that and have actually copycat solutions, have people who come together and see what they have in common. Jerome says his goal is to help people find their purpose. Tell us how you are looking to do that.
Well, like I said, people are on a hero journey, and the problem is most people never start the hero journey. Like, people don't think of them as a hero because they're so busy watching Spider-Man being a hero, reading about Jesus being a hero. Like every single story that ever existed in the history of mankind is a hero journey. This means our stories are hero journeys, but we need to behave like heroes. And anyway, when you start explaining people, when you start asking people what's your story, like. I think when you ask them what's your story and you treat them like a hero, maybe you make them realize they're heroes.
And it's like what you said. There's 13 million people follow Humans of New York on Facebook, and when I stop somebody on the street and I tell their story, each one will have thousands of comments. And these people tell me about their biggest weakness, the biggest mistake they ever made, the biggest failure that they've ever had. Some of these stories, the things that people admit, are just unbelievable how honest and raw they are. And it's so intimidating because you open up the most vulnerable parts of your life to the commentary of millions of people around the world. And I think when I'm talking to somebody, there is this kind of parallel thread running through their brain when I'm asking them these very, sensitive questions about their lives, that it's very, very uncomfortable to be revealing this stuff, but it's also so very validating to have somebody take an interest. and in your story and what you've learned from your life. And I've just found that this side always outweighs this side. Is that as uncomfortable? It's like I told a story of, he was actually the president of Vice Media. I photographed him randomly, and he told me about the story of, his autistic child. And afterwards he said, it was like standing naked in Times Square, having you post that on the blog. But I think it was important for it to be heard. And, I think that's something that everybody feels, is that the power of telling your story overcomes any fear at revealing things about yourself.
You said how to help people reach their purpose. The only way is to help them break from their fears. Yeah. Fear is the most terrible thing happening on our society right now, and media has a very big responsibility and role to play in not spreading so much fear into people's brain, because then it stops them from doing things, from believing in themselves. So when I interact with strangers in the streets and touch them, sing to them, do funny things, and nobody reacts like they react when you watch a Hollywood movie and people punch each other in the face in New York, well, you tell people to believe in others, to not be scared of strangers. Like, one big first step is maybe not being afraid of strangers. So,
because
the word stranger has such a negative connotation.
What is so interesting also is that you've both done so much to tangibly help others. And there are so many examples, but I'd just like to bring up two. One is what you did with the Mod Hall Academy in Brooklyn. Would love you if you can tell that story.
Okay. So I was
starting with how you ran into
so
right?
I'll give you the most epic 45-second story you'll ever hear. All right. So I am walking in January in a housing project in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I approach a young man who is wearing a hoodie. He's the only one out there. He's about 15 years old. I approach him and I asked him who influenced him the most in his life. He told me about his principal, Nadia Lopez, who told him that he mattered. I share that story on the blog that night. It has 1 million likes. Next day, I go and meet Miss Lopez and tell her story and tell the story of the school over the next week. We raised $1.4 million, and at the end of the week, me, Miss Lopez, and this young boy I met on the street a week earlier are in the Oval Office interviewing Barack Obama.
And there are so many stories to pick, but do you want to pick something about lighter light or any of the stories?
So I've been using Snapchat in a very different way right now, where instead of you pushing the content yourself, and it's about you or what you see, I'm crowdsourcing the content within the millions of people that are watching. So I'm saying, okay, today to challenge my fears, I'm singing in the subway of New York City. I'm singing ridiculous in the subway of New York City. I'm alone with my phone, it's scary. But I feel great after doing it. Now, every one of you, I challenge you to do it. It's gonna be painful, but you're gonna feel great. Record it on Snapchat, send it to me. I will pick the best ones. I will pick the 20 best ones and make it my story of the day. The story on Snapchat every day is supposed to be like 100 seconds long. So then I review 30,000. Like when I do this, I got 30,000 kids singing in subways around the world or wherever. And so I try to review as many as possible. And then I repost my favorite ones, and they got millions of views, just like if it was me doing my thing. And the few that are selected, they are highlighted. They got attention on them. They are the star. They are on the show. Like if they treat what I do like a show, they are on the show. They are, and they go through their fear, and also you end up with a video that is actually really great because it comes from all over the world. It's the best out of the 30,000. It's so crowdsourcing, participative crowdsourcing. That's really what's exciting me for the future of news, of media, of communication. And because we all have the same tool that both him and I have been using for creating our stuff. Like everybody, not everybody in the world, but most kids in America have have the same tool. So they don't have to use it only this way. They can also create with it, and you can incentive them to create with it. That's what excites me.
You know, I reached out to both of them. I sort of called them because I so totally believe in them. They had never, we met. Jerome came with us to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he was a major superstar. Brandon could not come, but what was interesting is that the two of them had never met until they met accidentally a week ago. And then
You
here,
wanna know how we met? I saw from far away this very interesting looking guy wearing a bow tie. And so I went to him. He was talking to a guy, but that was him. And he was interviewing him. That's one of his latest posts. Is this guy wearing a bow tie, showing him a.
And I'll tell you his story. So the guy is wearing a bow. Yeah, well, the guy was wearing a bow tie. Then I'll let you finish. Sorry. The guy was wearing a bow tie and this top hat, and so I was asking him why he dressed like that, and he pulls this picture out of his wallet of him wearing the same suit when he's like 1 year old, and he said, "My mom's been dressing me that for a year." I'm sorry. Finish.
But it's funny that we were both attracted to this guy because he was acting differently. I think we both like people that don't fit in because. That's what's exciting, that there is still hope for this world. You know?
I love the idea of two social media superstars converging on the same stranger in the cities of New
Isn't it
York.
awesome?
And then this Monday, Brandon was at the Met Ball, interviewing some homeless people in fancy dresses. But actually, what was interesting is that you interviewed also the people who catered the event.
Right.
And what was that experience like?
I was telling you, and you said that you wanted me to mention I don't know. The fancier the events, like the more kind of uncomfortable I feel. Like the thing that roils me the most is imperiousness. When somebody has tiers in their mind, TIERS, of people that are okay for them to talk to, people they might give a couple seconds to, and then people who aren't okay to them and talk to. And then, you approach them and they make this calculus about whether or not you're, somebody who can benefit them or are kind of on their level. And then you're basically approaching them on their terms, and it's not like that, well, there's some of that on the street, but, like, when I approach somebody on the street and it's a conversation between two equals, like, that's when, the most human connection has. And a lot of times when I work these fancy events, I got stiff-armed by a lot of A-list celebrities that night, it's just like, but I understand, their lives are, they're kind of in bunker mode all the time because so many people are trying to get them all the time and put them on TMZ. But what you were mentioning, so I just kind of, even when I got Vogue invited me to the Met Gala and I'm supposed to interview all these celebrities, I just kind of gravitated towards the caterers and the people, because those are the people that, that's my comfort zone. And I'm telling you, I put Katy Perry on the blog, I put Spike Lee on the blog. Derek Jeter I didn't put on because he said kind of a smart comment. I didn't want to subject him to the comment section. And but by far the most popular picture was a woman who was working the event and told me about her single mother, how she raised 5 kids, but she always was a nurse full time, but she always made time for her kids. She would just pick a couple random days each year, get them all the kids ready for school, and cook them dinner, and say, "Come on," or cook them lunch. Say, "We're late." And right before we walk out the door, she would scream, "Mommy holiday!" And then they would all take the day off. And I, told that story, and it was twice as popular as Katy Perry's. And Katy Perry was an absolute sweetheart, by the way. Out of all the celebrities I stopped, she was 100% present and wonderful. So not saying that she's not amazing, but it does say something that just the person working the event story was more compelling than what I was able to learn from her.
There are tremendous lessons here for all of us in the media. And there are even lessons in monetization that I'd like us to end with. These things are also monetizable without selling your soul. I mean, you've both had incredible offers to sell your soul. You had $1 million offers to promote unhealthy food, which you turned down.
I like in terms of monetization, I have an interesting story because like I said, when I started, I was completely broke. I slept actually on the floor of offices around Union Square for like 6 months. At first, I was making my videos. At some point, I had 4 million subscribers, and I was sleeping on the floor. And people in the street would be like, "Oh my God, Jerome!" They had no idea that because at the beginning, the mobile video space was not monetized yet. So I decided to monetize it to help all those peers, all my friends that were also
Sleeping on the
making.
floor.
No, they were not sleeping on the floor, but because they were staying with their parents, wherever they live, they had jobs. Like, but you have some amazing content creators on mobile, on Vine, that were just babysitting all day, and they wish they could have made more videos. So I reached out to Gary Vaynerchuk, because I know he works with a lot of brands, and we created this agency together, Grape Story, 2 years ago, and it worked well, wonderful to monetize. Like all those people started making money and everything. But then after a while, it hit me that it's not what I want to be. I don't want to be an advertiser. And so yeah, when I had a $1 million deal that came in, and I said no, and I made a full video on YouTube about it. I actually recorded the entire meeting. Gary didn't know, he was the one bringing the deal. So you can imagine, we kind of split up after that.
We won't tell anybody, okay?
Don't tell him. But yeah, and I feel so much greater now that I don't think of how to, that I don't take meetings with tons of brands every day. But now you're wondering how is he making a living, right? So I'm pretty happy that, so this was in November. For 4 months, I didn't work with any brand. I traveled a lot, I went meeting my followers on their home country, spent money on flights and hotels and everything, and I ended up broke again. And that's when all the brands were like, hey, do you want to work with us? Do you want to work with us? And I received a big offer from Pepsi, and at first I said, no, there's absolutely no way I'm going to work with you. But then I started like reviewing what they were offering, and they were mentioning working with a nonprofit in the Philippines that use empty bottles of plastic to create lights. They basically put water in it, they put it in the roof of the house, the sun taps into the water, and it lights up the house for the full day. It's free electricity for the day for the people. And so I told Pepsi, like, instead of making this tiny part of the thing, why don't we make it the entire platform, because the entire campaign, because I want to help this nonprofit. It's awesome. We can find a way. And it was a long discussion, but they agreed, and I'm super happy of the way I've been working with them. I'm just helping this nonprofit. I'm not selling Pepsi bottles. And I went to the Philippines in Colombia to actually install them to see how it works. And Pepsi agreed to give $1 per every time some of my followers use one hashtag. So we've already raised like $300,000 for the nonprofit, and we can go up to $1 million. So this is cool. This is making a living without feeling like you're betraying your audience. You're including them to do something good. You're empowering them. Like one girl from France, she's been tweeting the hashtag 30,000 times. She feels like she's made $30,000. She knows she's giving it, but she feels great about it. It's very empowering.
And you appeal to the same instinct of people to want to give. I mean, both what the story you described about the Brooklyn Academy, but also, you sold prints for Hurricane Sandy. You, at the same time, had a #1 New York Times best-selling book of Humans of New York. So again, using a very traditional form of media, books, to get your message out. It's just amazing to see all these ways, both old and new, that doing something you love, doing something that appeals to the better angels of our nature, is also monetizable.
Right. And I'm kind of, the same way. I've never promoted anything on Honey, or, the only way I've made money is through, books and speeches, because those are kind of only tangentially related to the blog. I've never had a sponsored post, or, never done advertising. I'm pretty puritanical about it. I just, I kind of feel like I'm a steward of these people's stories, and it's to, be selling any sort of products and be taking any sort of commission off other people telling me their stories is something that I haven't kind of resolved myself to feeling comfortable with. I can never say never, but so at this time, I just don't. It was always about spreading it to me. Like, it was not about money from the very beginning. Like, I had so many offers, and that's kind of the viewpoint. It's just like, make a blog, get an audience, monetize, and that's what everybody was talking about. And it was never about that for me. I wasn't some Puritan, but my direction was always towards growth. Just grow the audience, grow. And any decision where I would be taking money to give my audience content that would be less interesting to them than content that I was giving them for free, I always said no. And so I only gave my audience everything that they were asking for, and I never took money to show my audience anything that they did not want to see or wasn't what they signed up for. And I think that's a huge part of Humans of New York's growth, is that I only focused on growth and did not focus on money. And eventually, with 15 million people, a lot of colleges want me to come and speak about my story. And we've sold almost 1 million hard copy books. So it allows me to keep doing the work without polluting the people's stories.
And actually, that's a great lesson for young people starting in media that you talked to me when we had lunch together, which is that so many people, the minute they start creating something, they quickly move into, how do I promote it? And your message is, keep creating, keep making. Because so much energy goes right away into promotion that it sort of interrupts the energy of creation and growth.
You mean getting eyes on it or getting money?
Well, there's this
both.
There's this illusion among young people because they see all these instant viral videos and instant fame, and they think, okay, all I need to do is spend 10% of my energy on creating something and then use social media savvy, and boom, equals fame. Whereas in mine, I imagine yours, it's just my goal was 10,000 photos. And I just kept my eyes on the ground and told 10,000 portraits. And social media kind of serviced that goal and then just distributed it far and wide. Whereas if I had been, I'm going to take some photos and put a lot of energy into promoting it and share this and like this, then, I think, which I see a lot of people doing, bands, instead of practicing every day in their basement, they make a few songs and spend so much energy trying to make the perfect viral video that's, going to go out everywhere. And, I think one of the reasons Humans of New York dovetailed so much with the power of social media is that I had the very old-fashioned view of, I'm going to do nothing but focus on creating. And, the promotion takes care of itself. You don't have to focus on that.
I just feel that you're demonstrating something incredibly powerful about newer media and the future. And I know that everybody who's listened to you and watched you is in love with you the way I am. And so I want to end by telling you that not only are they sort of extraordinary, but they also, without revealing their names, have extraordinary girlfriends, both of them, who have the same sort of extraordinary social conscience. One of them, Jerome's girlfriend, is working with a fantastic project, the Global Poverty Project, that's looking to solve the question of poverty in the world, right? A minor little thing. And Brandon's girlfriend is working to save all dogs, a senior dog project. And they have 2 of them living at home, and one of them had a problem last night. So,
She's okay.
Lie to Susie, the senior dog. So, truly something to make everybody at DLD and beyond feel hopeful about humanity, human nature, and the better angels of our nature. Thank you so much, Jerome and Brandon.